With that, let me now, request my team to play a small message from Dr. Harshvardhanji, Honorable Union Minister for Science and Technology, Earth Sciences, and Health and Family Welfare. So I request my team to play his thought on New Age Technology show.
Technological advancements have changed our everyday life. Quantum computing, cloud computing, robotics, data science, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and Internet of Things are some major facets of new age technologies. I am glad that this new age technology show will showcase developments in these cutting edge technologies and further boost our progress in these fields.
So I think with that message from Honorable Minister, with a great insights and insight from our keynote speakers, Dr. Abhay Karandikarji, Director IT Kanpur, and Dr. Omkar Rai, Director General of STPI. Let me now move on to the next section of our deliberations today. On this next section, is today, the New Age Technology Show has been organized to talk about on three core areas each day. Today, our discussion is focused on emerging technology of AI, machine learning, and data analytics. As we understand, every day, and for this, taking forward discussion on these technologies, I'm privileged to have a very distinguished line of speakers today. Dr. P.K. Panigrahi, Professor, Department of Electrical Engineering, IT Delhi. Dr. Mausam, Professor and Head, CSE School of AI, IIT New Delhi. Shri Umakant Soni, co-founder AI Foundry at Chapter AI, and also chairman of Chapter AI and co-founder and CEO of Art Park. Dr. Kalyan Niti, Principal Scientist, CSIR, NGRI from Hyderabad. Shri Ajankya Malasne, a co-founder of Playment, a young entrepreneur who is spearheading AI development in the country. With this distinguished panel list of speakers, I warmly welcome all my panelists today. I would request everyone to switch on your videos and as we move forward for our deliberations from your side. I think every day we look up, as users, we look up routes on Google Maps, order a product on Amazon, or receive new feeds. AI is at play. Little did probably John McCarthy, father of AI, realize that the codes he developed at Stanford University some 70 years ago would revolutionize the use of technology. AI is slowly touching every part of our life. When we talk to Siri, when we talk to Alexa, when we say, hey, okay, Google, our AI systems are interpreting what we're speaking, and it's just not interpretation. They are now also taking forward the interpretation in terms of understanding and what intent and what systems needs to provide. Today, AI and related technologies such as machine learning, data analytics have been applied across various fields, be it education, be it healthcare, be it wellness, be it sports, be it large enterprises applying AI in customer management, customer handling, sales, automation, or be it AI in mobility, e-commerce, defense, etc. There is no sector which is left untouched with the use of AI. The overall goal of AI is to create technologies and services and solutions that allow machine-to-machine function in a much intelligent manner. Probably in some sense, it has been said, mimicking human brain. While the applications are ever increasing and opportunities in abundance are available, responsible AI is being talked about already. In the history of human civilization, AI is considered to be the next giant technological leap, similar to probably electricity, internet, and blockchain technologies, which is already we are witnessing. Friends, AI and related technologies are already scripting India's narrative for social transformation and inclusive growth and empowerment. Using the power of technology, where AI and emerging technologies are a key thrust areas, whether it's responsible AI, whether it's data collaboration, whether ecosystem development, whether it is empowering a billion plus citizens, I think the emergence of various associated technologies with the edge computing, advanced analytics, augmented reality, I think all the spectrum of technologies are coming together to serve to the various needs from the product perspective. STPI has taken up various initiatives, innovations for startup promotions in particularly to support startups in AI. Today, STPI established multiple centers of excellences, and many of them are focused on creating a right ecosystem, right handholding support to the AI startups from the nation, across the nation. To explore various facets of AI and how innovation in the space will lead to future, I'm delighted now to present our esteemed speakers. I'm sure in the next 50 minutes or so, we'll have a great discourse, great and I'm sure that all our young minds which are listening to us today would be able to see the opportunities which exist in the AI. So let me now begin with Shri Umakant Soni. Umakant, okay, yeah, I can see you. So let me now invite Umakant Soni. Umakant Soni is the co-founder and CEO of ArtPark, AI and Robotics Technology Sparks, focused on AI robotics for the next 6 billion users. He is also chairman, AI Foundry, which is investor in Karma Life. Before this, Umakant co-founded Pi Ventures, India's only AI-focused $32 million early stage venture fund that has backed some leading AI companies coming out of India. Sectable, Niramai, 10-3T, Locus.sh, Visa, Switchon. I think all these companies have been able to get his guidance and obviously funding from his Pi Ventures. Prior to this, he started one of the earliest AI companies out of India, vMakino, focused on providing emotionally intelligent chatbots to help solve sales and support issues on web and mobile way back in 2009 and 10. He is a pioneer thought leader, building a global think tank using AI for bringing cheaper and more efficient access to resources in the developing world. With an exposure of AI in areas of almost, almost a decade's exposure as an entrepreneur, investor, is sought after technology advisor for various Government of India initiatives in and around AI. He also advises various Fortune 500 companies in the area of AI strategy, investing and disruptions. Previously, he has served as director Science Inc. India, one of the leading global startup studio. With this, and he's all alumnus of IIT Kanpur. He has also holds 2 patents in the area of autonomic process systems. With this, let me now invite Mr. Umakant Soni to throw light on what are the global opportunities in AI, ML, data analytics space, and request him to share his experience with some very live examples, how domain-focused startups are setting ideas into path-breaking products in AI. How innovation powered by startups shall pave the way to realize probably $1 trillion digital economy for India by 2030. And what pivotal role startups shall play in the same. So with this, now let me invite Dr. Umakant Soni. Over to you, Mr. Umakant.
Thanks, Subodhji and Dr. Omkar. It's fantastic to be speaking here. I remember, meeting with you and getting energized, when we were just starting to build this AI and robotics technology park. And you said that it's a tough task, but you should stay on course for this, because I think this is something that India needs. And we are very fortunate that we got all the good wishes from you, and we now just started operating. So in fact, I have a just quick short presentation. I thought I'll just share with you so that it's easier for us to get on the same page. So let me just share my screen and see if we can. Yeah. So if you can see that, so this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to build this inclusive AI and robotics for 6 billion people. And the reason why I would say so, and I think I got a really nice introduction by Subodh as well. So I won't go into this. But yes, a very quick summary: 19 years of making errors in building technology, product strategy, AI investing, and now trying to dabble a bit on the policy side as well. So this is ArtPark. ArtPark is a Section 8 company set up, promoted by Indian Institute of Science and supported by AI Foundry. And of course, we got seed support from DST and Government of Karnataka, Department of IT/BT. And so we have a $32 million funding. So this is what we see as an overall space AI. We see that it's a combination of 4 sub which are coming and adding on to each other, right? So the wave was this handcrafted machine learning systems, and we're doing, classification, we're doing recommendation, matching, all of those things with that. And it still continues to be there, right? Then wave 2 came when the GPUs came in, and with the deep learning, the neural net started working, and you could do classification prediction, and we could see a very real impact on the human parity in terms of image and speech. And wave 3 is kind of very interesting. It is just starting off, where you can take the learnings of one domain and apply it into other domains. And that is something I think is going to be the next big wave, in the sense that next 10 years are going to be, or 20 years are going to be defined by that, right? So if you see the impact, right, of AI on the business side of it, right? So we see that there's a figure of $15.7 trillion touted around. So in the early years, we're going to see these, the improvements are going to be in the labor productivity side, right? So we're going to actually increase productivity, right? So the one person will able to do multiple tasks, right? If you see in the later part, I think that's where the real, impact of AI will kick in, where it will actually personalize at hyper scale, right? And that actually is a big opportunity, because in this space, still leaders are being sorted out. And I think it is a great opportunity for us as a nation in terms of companies and startups, and of course, academia as well, to really shine in this area. And this is probably, very apparent to all of you, but I thought I would just quickly go through this. So the human parity in speech and recognition, we already probably have in some areas. We also have it in a few of these strategy games like Us and Go. Some of you might have seen, some of these interesting, it's an interesting one. What we are now seeing with GPT-3, Generative Pre-trained Transformer, which has got tons of data behind it, right? That it probably is the start of this new wave. It is still not working very well. It's more hype than substance as of now, but it gives an indicator. And what we see is, this is kind of something that I wanted to talk about, that next 15 years are going to be this era of hyper innovation. And what do I mean by that? If you see, there was internet, and then you had e-commerce on top of it, right? Then you actually broke through in mobile revolution, and then whole bunch of businesses, Uber, Ola, around location services came after that, right? So technology innovation then was followed by a phase in which the business model innovation happened, right? But in AI era, what we are seeing is that the technology innovation and business model innovation is happening simultaneously, right? And it's a very interesting perspective, because this will completely reshape our existing worldview. And coupled with the fact that we probably are going to peak in terms of the size of working population in next 15 years, we could become the center of tech innovation by 2035, right? And this is going to have impact all across, right? So if you look at healthcare and pharma, it will be shifting from event-driven intervention to preventive continuum, right? So very fundamental shift, right? So we are talking about, so COVID has actually exposed us in terms of the healthcare ecosystem, right? So you used to go to the hospital when you actually have a crisis, right? Instead of that, the hospitals may not be there, but healthcare will be everywhere. And that's a continuum that I'm talking about. More robots will be doing surgeries than humans by 2040, right? They will also be nursing us back to health. And that's why you will see that there's a lot of investment which is now going to happen in robotic surgeries, virtual nursing assistants, and especially because in Europe and US, the aging population is going to really play a major part in changing the demography in terms of healthcare, right? So there will be a massive shortage of doctors and nurses, and I think that is where we are trying to pioneer some interesting areas called avatar robotics, where the nurse can be here, but it can then interact remotely with the patient. Maybe the patient could be in Japan without even going there. That is kind of interesting, coupled with the 5G. That is going to become an interesting area. Then autonomy will completely change mobility, right? For goods around us, revolutionize supply chain. In fact, Japan is planning to make 50% of the domestic fleet unmanned by 2040, right? And so that's the extent of change that you will see. And it's not just in the waters, but in the indoors. You have goods to person robots. Then you have mobile robots. Then you're going to have outdoor the delivery robots. So we're talking about autonomous trucking. And it's interesting to see this, right? So today we are designing mobility around human-driven vehicles, right? Now, if you see that there are going to be more self-driving cars and cars on the road, then the entire mobility ecosystem will be designed around autonomous systems, right? And that is actually interesting because if you see in terms of our cities and how we're trying to talk about the urban planning, right? We're going to have more smart cities growing in Asia Pacific than anywhere else in the world. And what do I mean by that? I mean by that smart grids, completely advanced public transit systems. It will have visual surveillance so that there's less need for security in terms of being manned by it. Intelligent traffic management, outdoor, smart outdoor lighting. And we see a lot of investment that actually go to in these areas. We're also seeing the huge impact going to be there in terms of the 5G networks, because we are seeing that there might be 1 billion people as digital nomads by 2030, right? And that's a huge opportunity. And we see that there are quite a few startups which are going to actually spring up and revolutionize the way we work actually. And that's not just going to be happening in India, but actually globally as well. Privacy would be a thing of past in the sense we would have to assume that whatever we are doing will be public at some point of time. Yet the man-machine interactions will be really secure and seamless. And we see a lot of investments and opportunities going in the cybersecurity area. And we are trying to grow a few startups. We are also seeing some interesting startups going to come up in this, what we call as multi-use AI, right? So AI, which can actually be used in civilian applications, industrial application, and also in defense applications, right? And it will be key to enable safe spaces for all of us. And in India, where we are, I think also is in some sense a massive opportunity for startups with Make in India movement that Government of India is promoting. We also see this huge impact, given that we have a very robust fintech ecosystem, of moving from digital to virtual, right? And in fact, Sweden has just started thinking about a virtual currency, and I think we will be seeing quite a few nations talk about that in the next 15 years. And that's going to be an interesting area because it will allow you to embed financial services in every single workflow, right? So imagine actually have a replacement and you are paying it by the amount of knee usage you would be doing, right? So how many miles you walk, based on that, you might be paying for it, right? So there's a massive business model innovation that we are seeing. We're also seeing this whole shift in terms of this going from knowledge economy to experience economy. And I think STPI, they actually allowed us to get a foothold in this knowledge economy. And I think they would be at the forefront of this new upcoming experience economy where we'll be creating, sharing, buying experiences, right? Which will be both tangible as well as intelligent, right? And for that, we need a new kind of education system. And I think the new education policy that, Government of India has pioneered, I think this is a fundamental new reset. And we have to make full advantage of that to basically create a new kind of model of learning, which is not going to be concentrated in schools or preschools and colleges, but is actually going to be for people to learn lifelong, right? And that is where I see that in India, we have the data. Definitely, we have such a large population. We have the talent. We have 8% of the global AI talent in India. And we also have the desperation, right, in terms of incentive to adopt these leapfrog approaches. And we are seeing some exciting startups come up in this area. Some of them we have backed, Pictuple, Nirmay that you talked about, which is applying AI to breast cancer screening using normal images. Locus, which is applying AI to logistics. And they're now live in 4 continents. And in fact, have crossed $10 million in revenue. We are also seeing interesting start that we backed in the healthcare space called Vaisa. It's a health chatbot. And recently, Government of Singapore actually made it available for all their citizens. And imagine, so this is a startup which came out of India, and it is actually being adopted globally. So this is heartening. So that means that it can be done in India. What we need, what we need was this ecosystem, and we're trying to create. And I think we, thanks to the support from Government of India, we are creating these state-of-art data banks for AI. And we actually have this initiative called Data Setu, which will actually allow for privacy-preserving data collection, sharing, and analytics. So the companies can actually share data, being completely secure about it, that it will be used for what they're sharing it for. We're also creating experts in autonomous vehicles. In fact, we have 1,500 acres of space, which is, so this is going to be bigger than what Google has got, right? So you can actually, come and, co-innovate with us, and we create the next generation of autonomous driving that is going to come around. And 5G test beds. So in fact, one of the first 5G test beds is actually coming up. We're also collaborating with global academia partners at MIT, and of course, some of the institutions in Europe as well. So it's a very interesting model. We have what call as mission projects, which we are taking. A few of them are identified in healthcare, in education, and of course in defense. And through those mission projects, we break through in terms of technology, and that then can be taken up and created in terms of startups. And then we are also creating a $100 million venture fund, which is just dedicated to this area. And this is a completely new experiment in India. And what it actually allows us to do is doing startup, or if you're a big company, you can come and innovate with us. And a lot of what we are promising in terms of, the Atmanirbhar movement, actually we can conceptualize and create it right here. So with that, actually, I would go back, and this is and I would be happy to actually talk to you more in detail. Anybody has any questions, you can just email me out. We have a very open, transparent partnership program. And the idea is to actually make everybody having access to this. So this is a very inclusive ecosystem. And I feel that together we can build this AI and robotics future together. So I'll stop here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Makand. I think it's always, good. Whenever we have met in past, we have, shared, and exchanged various deliberations and discussions in the space of AI and robotics. And it's good to see the vision, I think when we met around 2 years back, and the vision which you had in terms of how to build an inclusive ecosystem to support AI and robotics startup is coming true. I think as a country, as you said, and to enable Atmanirbharta of our nation, and we are looking today, this theme of this platform is also Atmanirbhar Bharat in Vishwa Kalyan के लिए विज्ञान. I think उस परिपेक्ष में whatever आप AI की space में कर रहे हैं और related technologies में कर रहे हैं, I think a lot of innovators would look forward to getting good support from Art Park and the AI Foundry in future. You have already given a good roadmap of not just next decade, but also 2 decades in terms where technology will move forward. As digital nomads, as digital transformation is happening, digital financial inclusion is just one of the examples, and there are plenty of examples which will be seen. And it's good to see that startups which are coming out of India, working for local needs, understand local problems, are seeing solving the world's problem. I would request, obviously this panel, so we'll probably take up some questions towards the end. So request you to stay till the end. At this juncture, let me now invite Dr. B.K. Panigrahi, Professor, Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Delhi. He has been serving as head for Center for Automotive Research and Technology, IIT Delhi. Prior to joining IIT Delhi, he has served as faculty in Electrical Engineering Department, University College of Engineering, Burla, Sambalpur, Odisha. From way back 1992. His research interest includes application of AI and ML, tools and techniques to power systems, planning, operation control, protection and management. He has also worked in the various areas of cybersecurity, especially for smart grid, especially for use of AI and ML in the energy sector and other critical infrastructure. Professor Panigrahi is presently also looking into the issues of EV charging infrastructure and the impact of fast charging infrastructure on the grid. He is serving as the editorial board member, associate editor, special issue guest editor, editorial board member of different international journal publications published by IEEE, IIT, Elsevier, Springer, etc. He is also associated with various international conferences in various capacities and delivered various keynotes in conferences worldwide. He has published more than 500 research papers in he's also fellow of INAE and senior member of IEEE. Let me now, ask Dr. Panigrahi to give his, given his long working in academia and research, in particular to applications and AI and ML in energy and medical, requesting him to throw some light on what research-led innovations are happening inside the academic campuses across India, and his thoughts on, what paradigm shift, in global academic research for AI, and where does India stand vis-a-vis to the same. So over to you, Dr. Panigrahi.
Okay, So thank you. Is my slides are visible?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll not take much more time. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. Thanks to all the dignitaries present here and my fellow colleague, Professor Mosam, who is sitting here. So basically, as already told, I'm looking into AI and ML and its application in the energy sector. The most important thing in the energy sector is energy sector. We are looking into the renewables, because as we are going to integrate more and more renewables into the existing energy sector like solar, wind, hydro. So here comes the role of the AI. The one important thing, why I'm telling all these things, because the solar and wind power production is completely uncertain in nature. So when I want to plan the scheduling of the generation for tomorrow in a competitive power market, so I have to do a lot of scheduling problem, lot of optimization problem, as well as lot of forecasting problem. So here, and a major amount of the data, vast amount of the data. So data analytics and AI ML tool comes into my rescue, because the variability and uncertainty associated with solar and wind. And in particular, there are a lot of problems associated when it is either tied to the grid or off-grid solution. So this is a practical problem. We have to solve this problem by means of the AI ML technique. Maybe you ask, what this problem was not earlier? Definitely not. Yes. The emphasis is the uncertainty. The emphasis is the variability, and the emphasis is the decision making. Because what happens in an electrical power market nowadays, because CERC and others are coming up with an independent system operator, and there is a bidding for this power. So ultimately, we have to look into the social welfare maximization. So this is one of the problem where AI/ML is playing a tool. So we use neural network, we use support vector machine, we use extreme learning machine. So all type of intelligent tools are applicable to this particular area. And in a similar fashion also, the EV, or my previous speaker has already told about the autonomous vehicle, connected vehicle. So I am looking into the integration of EV into the grid. So when all these EVs are integrated to the grid, their charging pattern, their discharging pattern, the uncertainty. So what about the grid reliability? What about the grid stability? So this is one of the problem which we are solving by AI and ML. So I'm giving just some example of AI ML where people have solved all these problems earlier. So one is DeepMind, which is a subsidiary of Google. They have applied this machine learning particularly to predict 700 megawatt of wind power. The problem which has already been discussed just now, I have told. So if you can predict the wind power, which is completely uncertain, the wind speed is completely uncertain, by means of any of the AI ML tool, then you can have in a better position for the decision making, so that you can cut down your thermal generation. You can have the carbon capture, you can reduce the carbon dioxide emission. So this is one example, and a particular company, DeepMind, has come up for this. And similarly, the other factor which I'm reporting here is the machine learning, which can boost the value of wind energy. The similar thing. Similarly, in Norway, they come about the hydropower plant manufacture scheduling. So my point is, whether you are getting the energy from hydropower, wind power, or the solar, they can be properly predicted, properly maintained, properly scheduled in connection with the other power, which is certain. My thermal power is certain, my nuclear power is certain. And another important issue is the grid. Because when you are injecting variable amount of the power to the grid, because government of India is focusing more and more renewable integration into the grid. So as you are integrating more and more renewable with more and more uncertainty, sometimes then the grid condition may be fluctuating, because suddenly now I am supplying less power from the thermal and I am not getting any power from the renewable. So thermal has to ramp up. It may not ramp up during that particular time. So some grid stability issue, grid control, grid monitoring, and the grid analytics is one of the aspects. So nowadays we are putting like power grid, etc., a lot of PMU, phasor measurement units. You can think of these are just sensor putting on my body for a body network. So like a body network, I monitor all the body parameters. So in a power grid, I am putting the phasor measurement unit. A lot of data are coming from the PMUs. So the data analytics, particularly for the health monitoring of the grid, is one of the important aspects. And similarly, as my grid is subjected, or my transmission lines which are running from Jammu Kashmir to the other part, India is one grid, and our grid is connected to the neighboring grid of the neighboring countries also. So now, because of the natural calamity, there is a grid failure. So finding the problem, where is it happening in the grid, is an important aspect, where you take the help of unmanned aerial vehicle, which is completely monitored and controlled by these AI ML applications. So robotics, etc., we are planning on this particular sector. So this is the fault prediction, which already I have told you, the maintenance, the dynamic maintenance, the predictive maintenance of all my equipment. Because my point is just very simple, as my previous speaker has told. AI, ML, all these tools, techniques, whatever all of us are developing, it should come into the problem solving in engineering and science domain. Maybe in electrical engineering, communication engineering, we have talked about 5G, maybe in the case of chemical process plants, maybe in any of the area or biomedical area. So that's why the machine learning can boost the value of wind energy. AI is the new electricity. These are the some reported literature. And recently I have got through some literature, the AI in energy startups in India already. This is April 17, 2020. It is published. There are 51 AI energy startups in India. And I hope nowadays, maybe as Dr. Sachin has told, more promotion is given to AI and ML. And my fellow colleague, Dr. Mausam, who is heading the School of AI, our director is very focused to create a new School of AI and ML in IIT Delhi. So I hope, and we have a startup culture in IIT Delhi. So the academia of IIT Delhi and the startup culture of IIT Delhi, the science park of IIT Delhi, the Sonipat park of IIT Delhi, there are many startups are coming up. So this 51 may be reaching 80 or something. I'm not about that. So three just I have reported particularly for energy sector. One is Climate Connect. They do the load forecast. They do the preventive maintenance for the distribution company, big analytics. My point is very simple. We should come up, the academia and the startup company or any company, like my previous speaker has already told, to solve the real world engineering problems. And power system, energy sector is most complicated structure, having a lot of equipment. They require maintenance, they require prediction, they require decision making. And so similarly, the electric vehicle domain, particularly battery analytics, a lot of apps are coming based on AI and ML, particularly to give you route information, diagnostics, fleet management, and equilibrium energy, use the cloud data for consumption analytics. So energy conservation. So if I can analyze the consumption of a particular plant, I can do conservation. So these are some of the data I have taken from various experts, like the battling climate change. AI can lead the way for energy solutions. By going this renewable energy, we can have the climate problem. And you know that the pollution and other things in Delhi. Grid infrastructure stability, energy storage, transmission distribution. So all are including the solar energy or solar energy, where AI, ML plays, and data analytics, they play an important role in this particular domain. So in Toto, if I'll go to the report of Niti Aayog in 2018, particularly for the National Strategy for AI, AI for All discussion paper, and I'm only focusing here the smart grid. Because if we are now going to fulfill the dream of our Honorable Prime Minister about the smart city, so in the smart city, the major vertical, whether it is smart public facility, smart transportation system, with electric vehicle or any other vehicle, any other fleets, public, private, smart grid, smart water delivery system, smart healthcare, everywhere we need AI and ML to solve our problem. Because nowadays, all the problems are interdisciplinary in nature, gathering a lot of data because of the advancement in the communication technology, computer technology, etc. Finally, I want to touch up one thing. As we are going for more and more AI and ML, particularly the software-driven approach. So one important aspect which should touch upon, again, we are touching upon this in IIT Delhi, the security of AI. Sometimes AI helps in security, because for intrusion detection or theft detection or anomaly detection in any of the system, we take the help of AI. Now, if there is any threat to the AI itself. So there is a beautiful thing people are talking, AI for security and security for AI. So that's why the security of AI also we have to look into, which is the demand of today and tomorrow. So how to improve the cyber security for artificial intelligence? This is an article published in Tuesday, June 9, 2020. So actually in January 27, a group of artificial intelligence researchers, they gathered at Asilomar conference ground in California, and they developed 23 principles of AI. This is the document I have taken from this, which was later dubbed the Asilomar AI principle. So the sixth principle here, it states the AI system should be safe and secure throughout their operational lifetime and verifiably so where applicable and feasible. So as my point is, as I'm using my AI and ML tools, techniques, software programs, apps, whatever may be, particularly for infrastructure, different infrastructure. It may be a medical infrastructure, it may be energy infrastructure, it may be transport infrastructure. So I have to look into also the security of the AI in that particular domain. A lot of research, a lot of startups now also coming up, looking into the security of AI. So thanks to all of you giving me the opportunity to have something from my mind and how IIT Delhi, and I hope all the IITs and academia and startups and government sectors, policy bodies can come up together to promote the research, development of the product, because we believe in IIT Delhi, as per our directors, whatever we are developing in lab, that should be fabricated. So lab to fab is the motto of IIT Delhi at present. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Panigrahi. I would request you to unshare the presentation. Sir, getting to understand AI and energy and a very focused sector, as you said, is something which I think that's a passion which you're driving. And I think that's where a lot of research you have been carrying forward. I think as an audience, myself, and I'm sure all the audience which is connected today has been able to understand the various opportunities, the real world problems which you mentioned, right, and which exist in the space of energy. I think there are, as you said, plenty of problems in terms of scheduling, in terms of operational improvement, efficiency, augmentation. I think the energy sector is one of the core sectors where AI is going to play a good role. In fact, you mentioned energy optimizations. In one of our startups working in STPI Center of Excellence is actually working on energy optimization for his e-vehicle using AI algorithms to further tune the consumption of energy within the vehicle when the vehicle is on transmission. So let me also now at this juncture let me request and invite Professor Mosam. Professor Mosam, Dr. Mosam is the founding head of School of AI at IIT Delhi, fellow colleague of Dr. Panigrahi, professor of computer science at IIT Delhi, and also an affiliate faculty member at University of Washington, Seattle. Professor Mosam has keen interest in the areas of natural language processing, intelligent information systems, web information extraction, question answering, dialogue systems, multi-document summarizations, and so forth and so on and so forth. AI applications, especially in the space of crowdsourcing, education, automated planning, I think his forte in terms of his research as well. His research explores several threads in AI, including large-scale information extraction over the web, neurosymbolic machine learning. He has received his PhD from University of Washington in 2007 and is a BTech from IIT Delhi, which happens to be his alma mater as well, right? Since October 2013, he has been teaching at IIT Delhi after 6 years of research faculty stint at University of Washington, Seattle. With strong interest in AI and ML, he has been sharing his thoughts and views on various platforms since the last 5+ years. And he was recently awarded the AAAI senior member status for his long-term participation in Association for Advancement of Artificial Intelligence and distinction in the field of artificial intelligence. He is ranked 65 most influential AI scholar for the last decade by Arnott Minor. I think that's a very good achievement, and we are proud of you, Dr. Mosam. Mosam has been among the very few professors who are working on carrying out recent research through its student in the field of AI, and hence I would request his thoughts on how does he see the research and innovation gap, especially in this particular field of AI, closing within India. vis-a-vis with some countries like US and China. And I think we are all aware there are a humongous amount of research publications happening within the space of AI in other countries than compared to what is coming out of India. Also, I would request his thoughts on AI for social empowerment, AI for education, AI for health, and various sectors as a country, as what we need today. And I'm sure that with those sectors, once the advancement in those sectors is as a country like India will be benefited most when it comes to application of AI. So with this, over to you, Professor Mawsam. Kindly unmute yourself, sir, Dr. Mawsam.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
And can you see the screen?
Perfect.
Great. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share some of my thoughts. And thank you so much for such a kind introduction, generous introduction. So you have two questions that you have posed to me, the difference between the innovation and the education gap, and then the AI for social empowerment. And I also saw that there is some discussion about jobs that is happening on the chat window, and there is some discussion about, you mentioned India versus other countries. So I will see if I can try to quickly share some of my thoughts in each of these, touching each of these points. Starting out with the applications of AI. Now, I think Umakant has really done a fantastic job of describing how AI has evolved, has revolutionized the industry, and has revolutionized basically every aspect of industry. Just from a slightly academic perspective, the real revolution happened not because of AI, or I should say not just because of AI, it happened because three roads that were happening, that were developing themselves in parallel, sort of came together in this beautiful, where the sum became much, much greater than the sum of parts, right? So what are these three roads? One of the roads is this road of hardware design. Now, actually, you may be surprised or not, computation and, hardware was always getting doubled every 18 months and so on and so forth, as they say. But at some point, NVIDIA got into gaming, and they realized that to do high quality gaming, they need to simulate physical environments fast, because when we play video games in the streets and so on, they move very fast. For that, they developed very high quality graphical processing units. They were actually meant to help with the gaming industry. And at some point, a researcher in Toronto realized that, well, what was so beautiful about GPUs is that it can do matrix multiplication really fast. And from there, they got the idea that GPU could be used for AI algorithms, and that made AI algorithms incredibly fast. And that is actually the reason, one of the major reasons why AI revolution happened, because if we could not have computed at that level of speed, then we would not have been able to achieve what we have achieved today. And the second, really, the street was the data street. Now, of course, Umakant briefly talked about data, but notice that for most of these situations, at least until 2018 and so on and so forth, the need was for annotated data, which means that given a data set, you need to have the label which is provided by the human. And this is a very manual and labor intensive process. And so a lot of people try to come up with data that can be automatically harvested. Now, this happened in the context of internet. For example, in internet, you have images, and in images, you have captions. And from those captions, you can extract the names of objects that might be present in this image. And then there was crowdsourcing that was happening at the time. So you could pay people small amounts of money to annotate large amounts of data. And so there large data sets got created, which enabled the AI algorithms. Because AI algorithms need a lot of compute, need a lot of data for them to be successful. And believe it or not, the first revolution, when it started, the AI algorithms were not novel. They were algorithms from the 90s. In fact, the algorithms had been proposed 20 years ago. The reason they were not successful at the time and in the last 20 years until 2013-14 is because they were never applied on large data sets with a lot of compute. So when these three roads met, that is when this catastrophic exponential revolution started happening. And now we are starting to see this development. Of course, there is a lot of development happening in the AI algorithms front as well. So now we have innovated substantially above and beyond what was present in the 90s. And now we are also starting to apply them in a lot of applications. And of course, Umakant has already mentioned that the applications are for pretty much every field of influence. And so it will be, if I just start talking about how and when, where AI can be applied in any kind of domain, it can take us another hour. So I will try to abstract it out by saying that, look, AI deals with complex unstructured data. When I mean unstructured, I mean you can't always put it in table. AI can also work with structured data. So, I mean, that has been the AI that we had been studying for many, 25, 30 years, and we can do that too. But the real challenge was unstructured data, like my speech. My speech doesn't have too much of structure. It is just a sequence, a very lightweight structure. It's a sequence of phonemes or sequence of signals that are coming in, and you want to make sense of it. Or text, again, it's a sequence of words. Or images, it's a grid of pixels. Or video, it's a sequence of grid of pixels. Notice that the structure here is very little, like sequence or a grid, but really that you can't put it in a table very easily. You can't say that one pixel is row 1 and the second pixel is row 2. That doesn't work. It's a fairly unstructured data, and that is where AI starts to really show its power and its strength. Okay, and where is AI used? AI is used for any kind of prediction task. Okay, as a start. I mean, again, there is much more to AI. For example, you can also have AI take actions and so on. But for now, where the success has been happening, it is in predicting something from the data, right? So I have some data, from that I have learned some knowledge, and now I get a new data point and I want to make a prediction. Can I make a good prediction about from based on my experience? That is where AI is really showing its strength, and this is also called machine learning, right? So now in many areas like healthcare, for example, these are just the various startups in healthcare, 3 years ago. So now, I mean, they are from AI chatbots, which Umakant also mentioned, to personalized precision medicine, to just data analytics, just figuring out medical imaging, radiology. I mean, there's just so much that is going on. For example, diabetic retinopathy is a poster child example where there are 1% of people who suffer from diabetic retinopathy. And you take this just camera, okay? You take this camera, take a picture of the eye, give it to an AI system, and the AI system will predict very easily on whether you have the disease or not. So now the need for doctors to travel inside the interiors of the country to really understand whether the people there have retinopathy or not, that really is removed, and you can easily take a video camera and a simply trained personnel who's not a doctor, and they can do the diagnosis. And of course, you can escalate it by, if the AI system says likely you have diagnosis, I don't know, then we can advise the patients to go to the city or go to a local doctor and get it checked. But this is another example of skin cancer where 2000-way classification of just images of skin was done better than the dermatologist by an AI system. It was trained on hundreds of thousands trained images, okay? And this is a Nature paper. And this is just one or two such examples. The limits are endless, because you can imagine that in any kind of situation, a patient has a certain history, a patient has a certain test results, and the doctor needs to figure out what disease do they have. It's a prediction task. What treatment should we provide? It's a prediction task. What tests should we prescribe? It's also a prediction task. And I am not saying that the doctors get replaced here, but I do say that the AI system might have some insights that the doctor might be missing, and the AI system can expose those insights to the doctor to make the best decision possible. And on that regard, I should mention that IIT Delhi and AIIMS have a very close partnership, and the directors of the two institutions have been really working together in encouraging researchers in IIT Delhi and AIIMS to work together. And I myself have a partnership with some of the doctors on celiac disease, and many professors are working together to use technology in the context of healthcare, including AI. I will give you another example, but then I will move forward. So this example is in law enforcement. And this is not one that people have spoken about, so I think this will be interesting. So it was found, and these are only a few of the examples, it was found that just by placing cameras on highways and just reading the number plates, the AI system was able to identify suspicious item and anomalous vehicles, vehicles which were maybe stolen or something. And they found that there was 65% drop in crime in Sea Point, South Africa. That's actually a huge deal, right? I mean, think about the amount of crime that we have in our country. If we start putting some CCTV cameras, and actually there is an example very close to home in Surat, Gujarat. It was very easy. They just put CCTV cameras and they started, and they gave them the database of faces of known criminals. And they just started doing real-time crime tracking. So what would they do? If they found that 2 or 3 of known criminals are congregating at any one location, they would just send a message to the police. The police will act preemptively and just show up there. If the police shows up there, then the criminals are disincentivized to actually do their crime, and so that resulted in 27% drop in crime in Surat. And again, what is the prediction task here? The prediction task here is given a video so coming from CCTV predicting whether a known face, a known criminal is in that video or not. Okay, and that AI system was able to do just fine. So these are some of the examples, and we are also at IIT Delhi working with National Security Council Secretariat on social media analytics for law enforcement. So the applications never stop, right? So Vadhvani AI has been working on baby weight and health monitoring, pest monitoring in cotton fields. Cure AI has been working on TB detection, COVID detection using chest X-rays. Vadhvani has done that for cough-based COVID detection. There's a lot of work happening in automated disaster management. So it was found that when the earthquake happened in Haiti, people were stuck under the rubble and they would just tweet about it. And there were volunteers and AI systems working together to process those tweets so that they can send information to the disaster management people on the ground that there is somebody stuck at this address inside the rubble. Please dig there so that that person can be saved. It was just beautiful how AI system and technology came together for disaster management. This is years ago. And of course, machine translation in Indian language is another very important area. So notice that when we solve any such problem, right? For example, baby weight and health monitoring problem, we can start to ensure that the babies in rural India are healthy, and if they are not healthy, they can they can be informed so that there is the infant mortality and mortality rates go down, and so the whole country progresses. So any such application is a social good application, and the opportunities are endless, as Umakant talked about. Okay. Now, there was also a discussion about where we are. There was discussion about jobs, and there was discussion about India versus China. So I think there is a little bit of a couple of slides I should mention about where we are in terms of jobs and otherwise. So first of all, if you are an AI person, you are in heavy demand. By the way, you probably know this already, right? Without doubt. 40% of the companies today struggle to hire and retain data scientists. And this has been my own experience. Like, for example, I work with startups. The startups has a data scientist. The data scientist works with me. They start getting trained a little bit through that process, and then they get a better job and they leave the startup, leaving the startup hanging. So in fact, it's a double-edged sword. This has happened to me thrice already with different startups. So now that's the general point I'm making. Even the top 400 companies, and I'm not talking about general companies, the top 400 companies, a third of them lack the state-of-the-art data analysis tools and personnel. In terms of the number of jobs vacant, just 97,000 jobs are vacant in India in 2019. And by the way, 50% of those require a master's degree or higher. And it is expected that by 2020, 1.5 lakh new openings would have opened. Now, I don't know after COVID what happened. So I'll have to update these records. Maybe this number went down, maybe not. But basically, or maybe it even increased because now we need to do more things in a technology efficient manner, and AI personnel would be needed. I don't know. And 2 million openings by 2020 worldwide in US. Sorry. Now, just imagine the number of people that are needed to be for AI to be successful in all kinds of countries. So this is the perfect time to be studying AI, obviously. There was a discussion about what happens when AI becomes successful. So it has been said by, I'm using the same report, World Economic Forum, a third of the jobs would be replaced by 2030. So obviously people are scared. What happens to my job? It is said that in US, truck drivers will stop having any job whatsoever because trucks will be replaced by autonomous driving vehicles, and truck driving is a very difficult job because they have to drive all night in these extremely long 24-wheel trucks, and this becomes hard. But it is also said that AI will create more jobs than it eliminates, right? 133 million new jobs are expected to be created. And this is again the same report. So yes, a lot of jobs are going to be gone, and a lot of new jobs, and maybe even more new jobs, and significantly more new jobs are going to come in. Now, this is a huge amount of flux. This is a huge amount of, variation and change that is happening. And maybe we are not used to it, but we are used to change. It is very important to realize, the hand rickshaws in Calcutta are no longer present, right? There was no job called the TV announcer, right? 50 years ago, because there was no TV. There was no jobs of people working in the cell phone industry because there was no cell phone. There were people who were painting movie posters on walls because, we needed those painters. Now all of that thing is being done in computers. So those designers have become computer savvy. So I think that, we are used to industrial revolution. We are used to planes replacing trains, trains replacing buses, buses replacing cars, cars replacing horse chariots. We are used to all this, exercise from ad infinitum. It's just that this is expected to be a lot of change. And so policy will become very important here. We'll need to rehabilitate people, no question about it. If a generation of people lose their jobs in a certain vertical, then they need to be retrained, reskilled. It is that, we will not have human jobs gone, but human jobs who cannot use AI will be gone. So you will have to become technology savvy. So at least for your own children, you can start making them technology savvy, start giving them robots, start giving them access to technology, start training them early on so that they get comfortable with technology. There's a lot that we can discuss here, but I'll move forward. And what I also expect is that teams of AI and human intelligence will be common. This is what we have been seeing every time, even in chess, which is a very simple example. First it was the human champion, computers were terrible. Then computers started defeating the human champions. They were at the same level. Now computers are much, much, much better, and nobody competes with computers because they're just too good. But now the best chess player is not a human and is not a computer. It's a team of human and computer. The computers make suggestions, the humans make suggestions, and together they debate and they finally decide on the best move to play. And such teams are the best teams, are the best players. In the future, we expect teams of doctors and AI doctors, teams of teachers and AI teachers. They will all come together and they will be common. Okay, let me quickly move. The second question is where we are as a country on this. Okay, so in some places we are really good, and in some places we are not so good. Okay, so for example, we are number 5 in the number of AI companies in the world. We are number 5 in the number of AI jobs in the world. We are number 10, unfortunately, in the number of AI researchers. Okay, and we are number 13 in the quality and quantity of AI research. And we start becoming 17 in how ready we are to deploy AI in the country, right? So now this is very interesting because we are a lot of people, a lot of companies, obviously a lot of companies and a lot of jobs, right? But when it comes to higher quality or high advanced AI, that is where we start to lack. We have, for example, Niti Aayog, this thing. So first of all, we need training, right? Without a question, we need to train a lot of people to fill these jobs, to also get advanced training so that they can start contributing to the advanced research. This is very interesting as a statistic. 386 out of 22,000 PhDs are in India in AI. So this is less than 2%. We have the world's 1/7 population. So 2% is just not good enough. In fact, if you talk about like the top researchers who publish at top venues, top conferences, top journals, we will say probably there are about 30 top quality AI, core AI researchers. I'm not talking AI applied to something. I'm talking about core AI researchers. And so, and then how would we achieve this? Well, we would achieve this only by bringing in advanced expertise and training advanced expertise. Who trains advanced expertise? Only advanced experts train advanced expertise. So therefore, these 386 people or 30 top quality researchers, they need to train. They need to train the teachers who can then train the people. This is all top down. And if we don't bring high quality researchers and professors, then I think we will not be able to really mobilize the ecosystem in being very AI ready. We will have AI talent. Umakant used the word AI talent. I mean, talent and expertise are two different things, in my opinion. Talent means somebody has some information, they are maybe ready to learn AI, or maybe they'll know some AI, but we need expertise. I think we need a lot of training and a lot of hands-on development and so on and so forth, and that I don't think we have a lot of. Of course, we need to throw in a lot of money to achieve this. And for example, here is some examples on the compute infrastructure requirements. Umakant talked about GPT-3. He was less excited about it, but today it is the most influential and most exciting development in the field of natural language processing. It used $4.6 million to train one model. I'm not kidding you. Just one machine learning model for NLP was trained with $4.6 million of compute. I'm not talking about the costs of figuring out the right model. Once the right model was created, they just trained it on data, and the amount of compute that was needed was just excruciatingly high. Of course, we don't have access to such resources, so we cannot expect that kind of innovation to come from our country, and we need to get there slowly, otherwise we will not be able to compete. And China 2 years ago had allocated $2.1 billion on an AI industrial park. In comparison, we are, I believe, far behind. We also have to be deployment ready, which basically means that suppose I have an agricultural, AI system, which tells me that right now there is a lot of sun. This is the time you should irrigate the fields, let's say, or this is the time you should stop irrigating the fields because soil have too much moisture content. I'm making this up. So in that situation, you cannot always call the farmer from their home to the field so that they can do it. You need an automated system so that when the AI system says irrigate, the water starts. When the AI system says stop irrigation, the water stops. For that, we not only need AI, but we also need systems which can use AI predictions and actually apply them in the real world. We are not ready there, right? So we need AI controlled processes, automated processes, so that we can use the predictions of AI successfully. Okay. So for all this, at IIT Delhi, we have created a school of AI, and this is my last slide. I will just briefly mention the fact that what we have been doing. It started only in early September, actually, not even August, and our goal is to first increase the number of faculty members who specialize in AI and AI applications. We hope to work with government on problems of broad importance, but also hope to work with industry, social partners, and startups on problems of commercial relevance and social relevance, and basically innovate and hope that the innovation education gap, which Mr. Subodh talked about, that really reduces, because we have been doing a lot of work, but it takes a different kind of people to take this into the field, right? The lab to fab, or paper to lab, and so on. It's actually paper to lab to fab, and there are just too many of the steps. You give a proof of concept. AI researchers are very good at that. Professors are very good at that. Then you create a product out of it. That itself is a different exercise. You need engineers who are trained, who are skilled, who can deal with corner cases. AI is a small part, in my opinion. It's a brain. Brain is very important for a body. If it didn't have a body, then brain will be of no use. Brain will say move the hand, there will be no hand. What's the point? In the same way, we need to create a very strong software system which has security, as Professor Panigrahi talked about, which has many components. AI is the brain; it will control, but AI can only control a very strong software system. So that software system needs to be created. We need very strong engineers for that. And then when we start working in actual real world, then there are new challenges that come that we would not have anticipated. And so there are 3 steps that happen: the research, the technology transfer, and then the deployment. And then in each of these 3 steps, there's a lot of innovation that is required. And professors can only do the first, and we are not doing enough of that. But if we start taking everybody else's technology and doing it in our country, that is also not going to succeed, because we can't leapfrog. Okay, this is a very important point that I'm making. Leapfrogging is a beautiful word. We use it to say that, oh, people have done something in the hard way, we'll just adopt it and we'll run with it. We don't have to work ourselves. I mean, I completely disagree with that mindset. I think we need to innovate here for our country. We need to be Atmanirbhar. And to be Atmanirbhar, because their technology works on their data, on their problems. The first world problems are different from our problems. The last 6 billion problems are different, and the first billion problems are different. I mean, we cannot just take their technology. Our gene pool is different. Our race is different, our skin color is different, our surroundings are different, our roads are different. Autonomous driving systems in the US will just never work in India, because they are not used to potholes and cows and rickshaws working on the streets. I mean, there's just so many challenges that we need to deal with, and we cannot deal with them if we don't innovate in our country. And I think that is the only way to do this. We need to innovate here. For that, we need to bring advanced researchers, and we need to train our own advanced researchers. For that, School of AI has started the PhD program. We just did our first interviews, so a few students will start. We are starting an MTech program. I want to advertise it, an MTech and Master's program in July. So the next semester, we will have MTech in AI from IIT Delhi. And later down the line, you also will start certificate courses to train people at large, and hopefully will make a significant impact to India's AI ranking. I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mosam. I think for you touched upon the very basic tenet of advancement of any technology, which is skilling. I think that's something which is very important, and I'm sure the vision which you are working at School at AI is going to be probably game changer within IT Delhi. And I'm sure a lot of academic institutions would look forward to the similar models of replicating and taking the advancement of how research can, how the training, skilling can work at various levels, whether it's PhDs, MTechs, and I think talked about very clearly the AI, if somebody segments it, right, it's very clearly there's a research, skilling required at some level and skilling required at a higher level as well, right? So beautiful, I think insight in terms of the overall landscape of AI, especially from the research background, and also beautifully presenting out the confluence of three roads, and I think the way the evolution is happening. And I'm sure all our audience, people who are listening, and especially the young minds, would look forward to understanding and probably get this fear out that future of jobs, especially from AI, is not happening. And since you also, Dr. Mosam, pointed out very specific problems in terms of, for a country like India, right? When we get into AI in health and how telemedicine can really make a big impact, because not every doctor can reach to every patient. I think for a lot of diseases, I think, and I'm in fact happy to share that in our MedTech Center of Excellence, STPI, we are incubating such startups which are working on this particular space, which you described altogether. And at this juncture, since you talked about image annotations, you talked about video platforms, you talked about labeling, you talked about data set availability, right? It's actually a privilege to me, for me to bring Ajinkya Malasne, sorry, I'm so sorry. Shri Ajinkya Malasne is a co-founder, head of business at Playment. Ajinkya is an IIT Guwahati alumnus of 2013 batch, very, very young entrepreneur. I think I have known Ajinkya for some time, through common friends. He, along with his colleagues from Flipkart, Siddharth Mal and Akshay Lal, has co-founded Playment. This is India's new age tech startup, which is helping AI companies to accelerate their AI development by providing core data related solutions and also giving the platform in terms of working so that they can enable good AI solutions. Whether you talked about autonomous driving, and you talked about examples of the way the truck industry is moving in US, autonomous driving. I think all that is possible because of great minds like Ajinkya and his companies, which are working, not looking data as a problem, but also looking into platform as an opportunity. Playment today is enabling computer vision and perception teams across the world so that they can effortlessly build and manage ground truth data with the smart annotation tools. I think this is a company which I have seen personally, from data to tools to platforms. They're working, very focused in this particular space. Ajinkya, I think it's right time to share your thoughts on how AI-focused startups, right, and especially what you are trying to do, are empowering, industries, and how in next era of industrial revolution or next era of, new solutions will be powered by you. Since you are also product of YC 2017, I think that's a good achievement already for a very young startup entrepreneur. I would also like you to touch upon few aspects in terms of what a focused, role of focused incubators, right? Because we are, incubating a lot of young startups, young entrepreneurs, right? So we'd like you to focus on some aspect about what incubators should look forward to and start doing it, so that the startups like yours can be incubated, can be nurtured, and work for solutions of global problems. So over to you, Ajinkya.
Thank you, Subodh. Thank you for inviting me to such a great panel over here. People are certainly have more depth of knowledge in things than I have. I'm very vertically focused on building a company in infrastructure, machine learning, and computer vision specifically. Fantastic presentation by Umakant, and I completely agree with Dr. Mosam here, and he speaks for a lot of industrial production level experience from jobs to deployment overall. So that's fantastic. So I'll touch upon the incubators part as well, Subodh. But I would like to just quickly share a journey of an entrepreneur which I went through and I see, because it's very fancy to talk about machine learning and AI because it's the hot word, right? But building machine learning is really hard. It's really expensive. It requires a lot of things to come together. So I'll quickly start with my story if for some people, and then I will touch upon what is the difference between the reality of AI and the promise of AI. And we try to mix and confuse this in our country a lot, because we think we are a software nation and we have done good in software, so we will do good in AI, which is not true. So I'll come to that fact, and then I will also talk about what startups need from incubators, from investors, from a support ecosystem point of view. Right? So I started this company Playment in 2015. I was 24 years of age. I was not that mature enough to know what are the complications. I think that the world will eventually go into the AI age, and then we will have AI like software cutting through every single industry, and it will change the world very fast, because software has changed the world very fast. And then we jumped into it. The belief is still strong. It's the same still belief. But there are fundamental problems in this journey, which is what actually is machine learning, what is needed to build machine learning products, what is needed to adopt machine learning products as a business. So when I was 24, I started this company in India. We knew that a lot of label data is needed. 2015, we started. A lot of label data is needed for the company. So we would provide a crowdsourcing platform, which Dr. Mawsum said. There were worse crowdsourcing platforms before, which could give high quality data. And we built a better, fully managed one which provides really high quality, and you can be dependable on the business on us. And that quality was our differentiation. And I went to all the companies in India talking about their AI initiatives. Everybody talked that we want to be an AI first business, and nobody had an application. Still nobody has an application which is fully robust, cutting edge, working. And so we have to go to US to find those customers. And then we found customers and we realized, okay, they are also lagging behind. And so it's just like the promise is really, really strong. The reality is complex. So a lot of infrastructure and playbooks need to be written to build AI applications. Now, and we stand at the center of this, where we have chosen as a problem to start. So I'll quickly share a few things, like what is AI application overall. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's visible.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yep. Right. So basically, this is Andre Karpathy. He's the director of AI at Tesla, which is like the most productionized non-marketing application, which is good in AI, right? So basically, Tesla collects a lot of data. They notice a problem. They notice a problem in the models that they have built to detect. They then label all of this data where the problems were there, and then again they train the model with where they found a defect, and they deploy it. Right? So machine learning is a data engine problem. It's not a software problem. So it's software combination with an assembly line of data that works together to actually build a production levels application, right? And this is the best AI automotive application that's available in the market for now. And then, so what we build is like, okay, data labeling is a big problem. So we build some automated tools, which is semi-automated, label some of the objects very clearly. And then humans can go on and label other objects. Then we prepare a high quality data set and then feed into the, give back to our customers data set, and they build machine learning models on top of that. And a glimpse of like machine learning applications in self-driving cars looks something like this. So this is how LiDAR data looks like. And then human has to go in the 3D environment and label each and every object so that tomorrow the machine can understand all of that. So we build these tools which can visualize as well as label data set. And now we are, we launched a product called a GT Ground Truth Studio, which can be used by university students, researchers for free to start labeling data. And if they need more complex needs, they can come to us. So this is shortly about Playment. So now coming back to the main topic, like the promise of AI. So the first things first is AI is not like software. The best machine learning applications that we see today is in marketing. The YouTube recommendations you see, the Instagram ads you see, they are the far most optimized machine learning models because of huge data, labeled data, personalizations. But we don't have ML applications that can find a person a job suitable for that person. We don't have ML applications that can find a life partner or match make for weddings, right? Like these are fundamental problems which needs to be solved first before we try to optimize like agricultural problems or something like that. So, so the thing is that, so why it is so? Why do we think things are the way it is right now? So one is like, there are fundamental problems. So one is like, we think that data is oil, and we as an Indian community would generate a lot of digital platforms and data, but like data is not oil. Like labeled data is the real oil. Structured data is the real oil. So if you don't have labeled data, you can't do processing beyond that. Like, so one of the things that we really has to do as a community is like build this infrastructure first. So it starts with like first conserving our data to us, like have servers in India, beat AWS and Google, and restrict accesses and have our data like to us, use the services that are available, put it on the cloud, make it more structured, build platforms for analysis and data. Like these are the things that companies need to do. Give more jobs to data scientists so that they can retrieve and make sense of the data without even using machine learning. Now, if this is sufficient to optimize your business or application, then comes the machine learning part where you need to supercharge your optimization to save time, make money, or like build products eventually. And the first two problems itself, like having the data and having a data engineering infrastructure, are the important problems to solve for India currently. Like, so this is what I have observed. So we've gone to the best tech companies in India, and there is no infrastructure there, which they don't know how to make use of their own data sets. They hire people from Google and Facebook. They try to implement something here, but it's not working out. It's like, because the end application is not clear what needs to be done for the Indian audience specifically. Then, so what I see machine learning overall is more like a hardware / manufacturing problem. It's not a software problem. Most of us think that, again, that we build a piece of code and it's applicable everywhere and we solve a big problem in one piece. No, it's not. Machine learning and deep learning fundamentally as engineering infrastructures have problem of domain adaptation. It's like it solves one local problem, needs more data to solve a wider problem, needs more data to solve a wider problem. And then this is like a hardware building problem, right? Like this is not a software problem, that you need certain different thermostats for other regions and deserts, but you don't need those for Bangalore. So it's just like that. So so I think the way we approach these problems from a quick gain point of view as entrepreneurs or as industry leaders is wrong. It's a slow process. It takes time, expertise to build all these applications step by step overall, which needs to be first internalized rather than, oh, we want our e-commerce website to personalize for every customer to come and let's make it happen in 6 months. It's not going to happen. So first, like understanding the reality is super important, right? And coming to the last part, apart from the reality of AI today, we work with companies like Samsung, Intel, Ford, BMW to label their data and understand their state of business. And we think that they have teams which are completely focused on data engineering as a problem and ML application as an output. These two things are different. They need to be cultivated differently. And the promise for India in AI lies because AI will always be a human plus AI. It's AI plus HI, human intelligence plus artificial intelligence rather than AI. Like there is no AI standalone product. Like we have antitrust hearings in US for the big CEOs because their human in the loop application for detecting election polls and influence is crooked. They want to do more human work on their machine learning models to actually make the social media sites really clean. So the promise of India lies because it's a combination of human plus software. And we have a lot of humans which are talented, which can be developed as an expertise, not from a computer engineering model building point of view, but also from a labeling and training point of view. Just like if you're a designer on Photoshop, you're using Photoshop and being a designer to create something beautiful. It's the same thing that you have a lot of expertise in engineering, then you are working on the models and trying to optimize for some bigger applications like energy or agriculture or healthcare, as Umakant and Dr. Panigrahi said. So why I believe that India can have a role play here is not because we have engineering talent, is because that it's going to be a coordination between the two, and the companies and the leaders who view this problem as one problem and put together the infrastructures to do so will win. Wipros and Infosys of the world have been serving, the TCS has been serving a lot of service companies building software. They are trying to think about these kind of problems right now, but more companies can think about this. This will generate more real AI applications, which will generate more jobs, which will generate more opportunities in education. And this will make the system ready for at least doing some play here, rather than like reading TechCrunch blogs of some AI startup did something in US, let's start the same company and get funded for that. That's not going to happen for sure. So this is where I just wanted to like take the whole audience to a small entrepreneur journey, how it started in the AI domain, the realities that I have seen through in the market and the companies. And I think that it's promising, but the promise comes with hard realities, which needs to be given time, given investment, and building the research and expert talent pool, everything, it will have to work together. So this is a fantastic group, I think, to discuss all of that. And I hope this will be helpful for everyone from a very practical, small entrepreneur's point of view.
Yeah, thank you, Ajinkya. I think you have brought out very clearly as you said, I think in your own words, promise versus reality. And I think what is practically possible versus what somebody can imagine. I think somebody who is running his startup from last 5 years, very, very focused on the vertical of AI, and very focused on solving the big complex problem of, getting data more structured. I think you rightly said, it's not, I think our panelists have kind of, has said this, and already the data is not a new oil, but it's a structured data, the meaningful data, and how we can make use of the data as actually when the real value of data can be made use of. I think with this thoughts from you, a very young entrepreneur, as I said earlier, would be very exciting to all those who are looking forward to take this journey of innovation and innovation-led entrepreneurship. I think with that model, we do hope this platform ISF is actually creating that kind of know-how and vibrancy in this ecosystem. With this, now let me invite Dr. Kalyan Nethi, Principal Scientist, CSIR, NGRI. Dr. Kalyan is a specialist in high-performance computing with a focus on efficient implementation of computational expensive algorithms on modern computer architecture. He has extended data mining techniques for effectively addressing disaster management by processing novel methods for classification and spatial data dynamically. Dr. Kalyan has carried out rigorous analysis of classification methods and developed several efficient and less computational expensive operators for modeling spatial data over various platforms. As an expert in enterprise transformation and more than 18 years of experience in IT services industry, and especially working on the within the space and realms of NGRI, I would request Dr. Kalyan, given that NGRI is a constituent research laboratory of Council of Scientific Industrial Research, and given the fact that CSIR is the largest research and development organization in India, which has been granted more than 14,000 patents worldwide since its inception, with such a strong pedigree of CSIR, with such a strong bank of patents and innovation culture, which is probably there inside CSIR, I would request his thoughts, his perspective on how to advance the commercialization of research happening in laboratories like his, and especially what enablements these labs can do in furthering the ecosystem of innovators working in these cutting edge technology. Also, I would request his thought process, given he comes from a specialized, focused government focus for various use cases like disaster management. So his thoughts on how AI and related technologies can be made use of, especially when we talk about AI for social, empowerment, right? And AI for social cause. How will that happen? So over to you, Dr. Kalyan Nethi.
Yeah, thank you, Subodhji. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a very honorable stage for me to represent CSR NGRA. And also, I really thankful for Subodh and team STPA and NISCARE for considering to be part of this journey. So, strictly going into, I would like to mention that AI basically stands with asking the questions, and of course the collecting the data, and of course the analyzing the data. Most of the panelists have mentioned about these things extensively. Good to hear them, and I think they have covered everything more or less. But as Subodh has rightly pointed out about the bringing out the ecosystem for enablement of AI and ML and data analytics. So the main considerations are about the data collection, I think the management, and the model of AI to be deployed, and then development and again deployment. So which follows with the training and validation. Having said that, I would like to draw the attention of the audience about the Niti Aayog's AI strategy for all document, which was released in August 2018. They clearly mentioned about the 5 focus areas about the healthcare, agriculture, education, smart cities and infrastructure, and of course, mobility and transportation. And also they mentioned clearly about the barriers which affect these areas to achieve successfully at India, like lack of broad-based expertise in research and application at AI, and absence of enabling data ecosystems, like access to the intelligent of what the entrepreneur has mentioned just now, and then the high resource cost and low awareness of adaptation of AI. And the most important thing is about Panigrahi Saab has also mentioned, it is about privacy and security, which here in 2017 a think tank has been formed and they formulated principles. And of course, the most important aspect is the absence of collaborative approach to adoption and application of AI. Now, I really like to draw the attention of, I think he has left the panel, I think, I don't know, Ajinkya? Yeah, I mean, he has mentioned directly about trying to approach different companies at India and all, and he found out that most of them are left with the data sets which are unstructured or they are not labeled. And it is very, very much true in every scenario of people working at the institutes like us also. So on a whole, I would like to sum up it as bringing the data together is the main concept of this forum, where all the universities, the agencies, private sectors, and the people who are having the data to bring together these data sets, and bringing the data set and storing them is again one aspect. And then again, as Umakant has also rightly pointed out, he is trying to build up a big data bank. And then maybe the labeling part is the most important thing. That is my initial thought which came to my mind, because sometimes suppose say if we take NGRS part, we collect a lot of field data, and sometimes it may not be labeled. And this data may be useful for some other people where they don't need to go to the field work and do it. So this is where the AI principle will come into picture and help out the problems which we are facing here. And of course, as the panelists have rightly mentioned about the lot of energy is going on in building this data. We already spent a lot of energy, and again, bringing this data and then labeling it and making it structured is also a big job again. So to overcome these issues, Niti Aayog has also mentioned about a data sharing policy among the government agencies, where there is a lot of data lying in silos across the ministries, and of course, take it as biotechnology ministry or Minister of Earth Sciences or something like remote sensing, ISRO and all, where the data can be shared among the common data, which can be shareable, which is not having any conflict of interest with the agencies. Those data should be shared. And of course, the data sharing among the corporate agencies, that is the most important thing, because they collect a lot of data, like, as other panelists rightly pointed out about collecting the interests of the audience about their own shopping, like watching the movies, the advertisements, and etc. etc. It depends upon what type of the data they are very much interested in. And then about the consent of data sharing among these agencies. Taking the consent and then which type of data need to be really shared with them, which not to be shared, and where we need to stop exactly. And then of course, the mentioning about the crowdsourced collection of data by government agencies. This is what the issues mentioned by Niti Aayog in their document about how the barriers of AI to be successful at India can be sorted out. So then comes the most important part is about the ethics and fairness. This is the most important thing we face everywhere. And coming to the fairness and ethics in AI in terms of bias-based AI research approach and privacy at the data, and then dealing with the data storing issues and also retrieval issues. So 2 years ago, being a postgraduate researcher graduate in artificial intelligence, I should mention that 2 years ago, machine learning was not that pervasive. Now, every team has got a data scientist. They are looking for a data scientist. They are looking at a possible insights, what could be drawn from the data, be it structured or unstructured. There is no as such definition about these two things, because these people are not real data scientists, but they are domain experts. So what we need to do them is that giving a training to them on these aspects of how to make it the data structured, and then how to make unstructured data be useful again. Or we are keeping the everything in unstructured data into a data pooling center or data center and wasting a lot of energy. So as you rightly pointed out, my intention was to bring out these AI models, which are fast-based and also which takes less energy. As Professor Mausam has rightly mentioned, to make a model, they spend something like 4.6 million to make a model. Most of it might be went into the compute, as you rightly. So to drive the compute, you require a lot of energy, be it a power or cooling and everything. So how to save this type of things? By using a GPU-based coding or a high-performance-based AI/ML approach, these things are very much required for the futuristic AI challenges which are facing at India. So in this scenario, what I would like to draw the attention of the audience is that about understanding of the domain and understanding about the final output. As Dr. Mausam has rightly pointed out about the bringing out the models for predicting the output. Whereas what I coin is about the accuracy of the prediction model, which it need to be perfectly designed. So to bring into the picture, deep learning models are being used like reinforcement learning. We are using it at NGR, and that we are enabling data scientists to build, deploy into production. They can analyze the models. The engineers who are building this small Lego bricks, what the normal scientists they use, and then bringing it into a structured way, and then bringing out a model, developing it and deploying it is a big task, And also the major challenge lies about dissemination of this information to the target audience. What type of data we are using, we are trying to use at our offices or our agencies, and how the people are looking at it. For example, take the YouTube example. YouTube gives the most preferred videos for the users on the basis of the previous watched videos. So likewise, we need to also design a strategy here where the type of data we are trying to disseminate to the public, the mostly through a web-based platform. And if it is a geo-referenced data, it should be on GIS platform. So this type of integration of data on bringing the unstructured into structured way, and then labeling it, and then disseminating this information onto the web-based platforms, probably in a GIS way, and then trying to provide a efficient searching mechanism for them is the most important part, which I really try to mention here, emphasize here. Like Professor Abhay in his initial address has mentioned this important thing about fusioning of this deep learning techniques for joint modeling of video, audio, and text, like natural language processing. There is a convolutional neural network problems, and then the algorithms trying to talk to each other, and then sharing and then trying to improve themselves into a better program. So to summing up, I want to say that whatever artificial intelligence which is augmenting our capabilities, it is freeing our time by virtue of doing analysis and then doing a decision making and supposedly automating the mundane tasks which you are doing it regularly. So it is not taking away any job resource here, but the ability of machine learning algorithms to learn and train themselves into a hyper personalized way is related to our fundamental ways of behaving ourselves. So like Ajinkya has taken about the example of Tesla car manufacturing way, they try to improve the engine related issues by taking different feedback from the customer where they are facing and then trying to bring out a model and then putting out into their own perspective. And also, as Dr. Umakant has pointed out about the efficient chatbots, which reduces the customer care resources at the institutes and the organizations also. So what I would like to draw the attention about is that we have a different software repositories, data repositories, and these data-driven repositories are sometimes engineered into a concept called as software engineering, which is no longer existed. I remember in 2010 when I met Professor Anil Sarda in IIT Bombay, we were discussing about trying to bring out a most reliant shortest path algorithm for not a traveling salesman problem, but in a different way about doing it through ontologies, weighted ontologies and all. I think Professor Mawson might be knowing about him. So we try to bring out a search engine optimization technique in 2010 about these things. Now that became evolved into an artificial intelligence problem. So that's where we try to bring out these things into a programmable technology such as SDN, NFV, and storage virtualization is the one which we are doing right now. This evaluation is bringing in much more complexity. Now we are trying to bring this AL, ML techniques into the networking also, like our computer networks, where the network management, dynamic network management, security, enforcement, and the network management resource allocation, real-time online analysis, as well as trying to bring out these analysis onto the offline techniques by using these deep analysis techniques on the massive historical data. So further, I also want to bring attention about disaster management. We try to classify geodata, as I mentioned earlier. So that this geodata which is coming as a live, we try to store it in atom data. It is called a GeoRSS data, and then we try to classify on the fly, and we try to bring out the most appropriate search result, which is displayed again onto the web-based platform using a GIS-based thing. And then this dissemination of this information over a web, this is called GIS, web-based GIS platform, spatial dissemination of information. It is a challenging task because it is on-fly data, and then we try to bring out reinforcement learnings into these techniques to effectively disseminate the information over the web. And whereas this information is coming in seconds and it is in TBs, so we try to bridge these things, bringing out a fast-based modeling approaches at our offices. So saying that, I would like to conclude with mentioning about coining about autonomous programming, where we are trying to bring out these things at our offices. We are doing this research here. So the major challenge is to start with detection of potential security problems which are bringing out by these models. Now some team is building out a machine learning model, and we don't know whether this model is perfectly working or not. It is doing a prediction. Probably it is doing a 90% prediction or something like that. So who is going to estimate the prediction? So the accuracy estimation is the one which is the most important thing. So here the word called as a spatial machine learning management is the most important task which we need to look for the future, and then better tools for integrating this thing into the workflow of the artificial intelligence model, which we are doing it right now. So here definitely humans have to be part of it. And then the team may be having a diversity of ideas. There is a people who are doing spatial analysis on the image and an image processing, and then also geoprocessing of the data, and then trying to solve out these problems and effectively disseminate this information to the end people. Otherwise, it will not sort out the societal issues which we are having, be it healthcare or disaster management or agriculture or any other thing. So having said that, the problem of solving these type of issues at organizations which they are trying to put ML and AL together, which they don't have any idea, because they are sitting on the huge repository of data. So here we need to collaborate with people with industries, the private companies, entrepreneurs, Of course, IITs will come into picture, universities and academia. And then by collaborating with all these peoples, all these areas, we will definitely try to sort out this issue. And then I think this forum will address this type of problems and then bring out new ideas. And then the approach of IIT Delhi to start up with a separate AI school is a very encouraging idea. And then I think without forgetting the basic computer science concepts, I think that is the most important thing, because tomorrow we may see, we 2 to 3 years back, we are talking about high performance computing, GPU computing, cloud computing. Now we are talking about AI. Now we are talking about deep learning. And then of course, something else will come in future. But if you forget the basics of computer science, I think we will be somewhere losing the entire picture into the scenario. So having said that, these are my thoughts onto this one. I think I put my points here, sir. Thank you, Subodh.
Thank you, Dr. Kalyan. I think especially your special emphasis on making responsible AI. And I think the emphasis on it is not just data storing, but issues with respect to data retrieval, issues with respect to data privacy, issues with respect to data anonymization, and how we make AI algorithms more and more responsible. I think with the overall landscape of AI as important parameter. I think we had a very, very wonderful deliberations, in last, I would say we have extended this session by almost 40 minutes or 45 minutes. It's a huge discussion, and I think together we have been benefited as well. At this juncture, I'm not taking any questions given the paucity of time, but let me invite my fellow colleague, Dr. Pooja Ghosh, who's also the coordinator, and also let me thank Dr. Sanjay Burdeji, who's also coordinator, and Dr. Dhirendra Ji, who's also the coordinator for this event, for bringing this today's first day, track one of this particular day. So over to you, Dr. Pooja Ghosh, for taking the session forward in terms of vote of confidence to our...
Very good afternoon to our keynote speakers, panelists, and attendees. On behalf of the organizing committee of New Age Technology Show, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our keynote speakers, Professor Abhay Karandikar and Dr. Omkar Rai Ji, Director General, STPI. Thank you so much for your enlightening words highlighting the opportunities in the field of New Age technology and their role in building a Atmanirbhar Bharat. I would also like to thank our eminent panelists, Professor Panigrahi, Professor Mausam, Shri Umakant Soni Ji, Dr. Kalyan, and Shri Ajinkya Malasani Ji for an enriching panel discussion on AI/ML and data analytics. Special thanks to Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India, CSIR, NISTADS, NISCARE, Software Technology Parks of India, STPI, and Vigyan Bharati for bringing together this grand platform of IISF 2020. Thanks to all the participants, and I hope you all are motivated through the keynote speeches and panel discussion. Thanks to all the coordinators, Shri Subodh Sachanji, Director, STPI, Dr. Amreshwar Rai Ji, Joint Director, STPI, Shri Sanjay Ji, Senior Scientist, CSIR, NISCARE, and Professor Dhirendra Ji from BLD Institute of Research and Learning for setting this grand platform into motion. I also thank the tech support team for making the best possible management for this virtual program. Thank you all. Now I hand over the platform to Shri Sanjay Burdeji for showcasing the innovative videos based on AI/ML and data analytics. Thank you.